Welcome back to Cozy English Corner. I am Alex. Looking out the studio window right now, the sky is that classic Columbus, Ohio gray. The temperature dropped about 30 degrees overnight, which is perfectly normal for us here in the Midwest.
It really is. You always have to keep a heavy coat and a light sweater in your car just to survive the week. I am Fiona, by the way. Thank you for having me.
I am so glad you are here, Fiona. For our listeners, Fiona is a corporate event planner here in Columbus. She organizes everything from small business meetings to massive conferences near the Ohio State campus. That means she manages a lot of details.
Sometimes too many details. My brain rarely stops working.
I understand that completely. And that brings us to today's topic. Today we are looking at two small English words that cause a lot of confusion: each and every.
Those are very common words. People use them constantly.
Yes, they do. But for an English learner, they look similar and often translate to the same word in their native language. But in standard American English, the feeling of these two words is entirely different. Let us start with a simple idea.
I am ready.
Rule number 1. We use each when we think about people or things separately, one by one. It is highly individual.
That makes sense. In my job, I have to check the dietary restrictions for each guest. I am looking at them as single, separate people because I cannot give a peanut allergy a general meal.
That is a perfect example. You give individual attention. Rule number 2. We use every when we think about all the people or things together as a whole group. It feels much more general.
So, following my event planner logic, I check each dietary requirement to ensure every guest has a safe and wonderful experience.
Exactly. Each is one by one. Every is all together. But I want to talk about the psychological weight of this. There is a reason why each feels heavier to say and hear.
Heavier? What do you mean by that?
In cognitive psychology, there is a concept called cognitive load. When you hear the word each, your brain is forced to mentally separate items. Processing individual choices actually burns more glucose in the brain than processing a generalized group. It physically costs you more energy.
That is fascinating, and it makes perfect sense. Dealing with each problem at an event drains my energy. If I can just send an email to every vendor at the same time, it is much easier.
Yes, and this brings us to an unspoken pain in modern life, especially regarding money and adulthood. Think about the fear of credit card debt. Many people ignore their statements because looking at each transaction is painful.
I completely understand that. It is much easier to just accept that you have a large balance than to look at each purchase and feel the guilt of buying coffee, buying lunch, buying a sweater you did not need.
Exactly. The word each forces you to face the reality of your individual actions. But let us look at the word every. We use every for routines, repeated actions, and regular time expressions.
Like saying, I wake up at 6 o'clock every morning.
Correct. Now, grammatically, you can say, I wake up each morning. It is not incorrect, but in natural American English, every morning is much more common. Why? Because routines are a blur. We group them together.
That actually touches on another heavy feeling, the blur of routine. When you say, I go to work every day, I pay bills every month, it can feel like you are trapped in a loop. Life just becomes one big every.
That is profound, Fiona. Each is the anxiety of the immediate details. Every is the existential dread of the endless routine. English learners often miss this emotional nuance when they read from textbooks.
So, how can we help them sound more natural in daily life without making them too depressed about adulthood?
That is a great point. We help them by practicing natural combinations. Let us try a short exercise. I will give you a sentence that sounds a little rigid, and I want you to make it sound like a normal person speaking here in Columbus.
I can do that.
Sentence 1. Each weekend, I go to the supermarket.
I would say, I go to the supermarket every weekend.
Perfect. Every weekend is a routine. Sentence 2. The manager sent an email to every single employee one by one.
Because you said one by one, I would change it to the manager sent an email to each employee. It shows individual action.
Exactly. You fix the contradiction. We cannot say every employee if the action was specifically separate and individual. Let us take another step. There is a phrase we use when we want to add strong emotion to a routine.
Are you talking about every single?
Yes, every single day or every single time. This is where the grammar touches human frustration. If a learner says, "My car breaks down every time I drive in the snow," it is a simple fact.
But if they say, my car breaks down every single time I drive in the snow, I can hear their anger. They are tired of the situation.
Exactly. And living in Ohio, complaining about driving in the snow is a necessary skill. Adding the word single forces the listener to realize that no exceptions occurred. It makes the group of events feel heavy again.
I noticed something interesting. We can say every single time, but we do not say each single time.
That is a brilliant observation. Each single time is incorrect standard English because each already means single. It would be redundant. Every groups things together, so adding single breaks that group apart for emotional effect.
I love how complex our everyday language actually is. We use these words constantly without realizing the invisible rules we follow.
Here is another fascinating psychological fact. When linguists track eye movement during reading, they find that readers pause just a few milliseconds longer on the word each compared to the word every.
Wait, really? Our eyes actually slow down?
Yes, because each instructs the brain to visualize distinct units. The brain has to build a mental fence around the object. Every allows the brain to sweep across the concept without building fences. It is a faster cognitive process.
Building mental fences. That perfectly describes how I feel when I am auditing an event budget. Looking at each invoice is like hitting a fence over and over.
Exactly. So when a learner tries to decide which word to use, they should ask themselves, do I want my listener to stop and look at the fence, or do I want them to see the whole field?
That is a very helpful visual. So, if I am frustrated that my husband leaves his shoes in the hallway, I would say, I trip over your shoes every time I walk through here. I am looking at the whole field of annoyance.
That is an excellent natural example. Now, what if he left 5 pairs of shoes lined up and you had to step over them one by one?
Then I would say, I had to step over each pair of shoes. And then we would need to have a serious conversation about household respect.
I think many listeners can relate to that completely. Let us shift to another structure that learners often struggle with, combining each with of. We often hear people say, each of the students, or each of us.
Yes, I use each of us quite a bit at work. Each of us has a different responsibility for this project.
That is a highly effective phrase. When you use each of us, it creates a sense of shared responsibility, but individual accountability. It is very professional, but also very warm.
I never thought about it like that. If I just said, everyone has a responsibility, it is easy for an individual to hide in the crowd and do nothing.
Exactly. The psychology of grammar strikes again. Everyone diffuses responsibility. Each of us pinpoints it. You are naturally using language to manage human behavior.
I am suddenly feeling very powerful.
You should. Language is power. Let us try to correct a mistake learners make with this structure. Sometimes I hear, every of the students passed the test.
That definitely sounds broken. We cannot say every of. It has to be every one of the students, or simply every student.
Perfect correction. Every cannot be followed directly by of. It needs a noun or a pronoun first. Each of works perfectly. Every of does not exist in standard English.
So, to summarize that for anyone listening, you can say, each of the boxes is heavy, but you must say, every one of the boxes is heavy.
You are a natural teacher, Fiona. Now, let us look at another common daily situation where choosing the wrong word sounds strange. Let us imagine you are at a coffee shop here in Columbus, maybe in the German Village neighborhood.
I love getting coffee down there. It is beautiful, but parking is terrible.
Parking is indeed terrible. You walk into the shop and you notice a sign. Would the sign say, "We bake fresh bread each day," or "We bake fresh bread every day"?
It should definitely say every day. It is a daily routine of the business.
Yes. Now imagine you are looking at the pastry case. The worker says, "I personally decorated every single cupcake." What does that tell you?
Analytical. It tells me the worker put individual care into them, but they are also emphasizing the large amount of work they did by using every single.
Exactly. They are proud of the exhausting work. If they said, "I decorated each cupcake," it sounds gentle, slow, and careful. Both are correct, but the emotional story changes completely.
This makes me realize that learning English is not just about memorizing vocabulary lists. It is about learning how to manage the feelings of the person listening to you.
That is the core philosophy of Cozy English Corner. We want our listeners to communicate with empathy and accuracy. It is why we focus on the undiscussed aspects of language, like the mental load of a word.
I really appreciate that approach. When I travel abroad for conferences, I notice that non-native speakers are often technically perfect with their grammar, but sometimes the tone feels slightly mismatched to the situation.
Yes, and tone is built through small choices. Speaking of small choices, let us test your reflexes with a rapid-fire drill. I will give you a scenario. You tell me if you would naturally use each or every.
Bring it on.
Scenario 1. You are handing out name tags to people at the front door of a corporate event.
I handed a name tag to each person.
Correct. Individual action. Scenario 2. You are talking about how often you call your mother.
I call my mother every Sunday.
Correct. Routine. Scenario 3. You are exhausted and complaining that Ohio weather is ruining your outdoor plans continuously.
It rains every single time I try to have a picnic.
Perfect use of every single. Final scenario. A teacher is making sure students understand the test rules before handing out the papers.
The teacher looked at each student to make sure they were paying attention.
Outstanding. You just demonstrated exactly how these words flow in natural American English. Let us do a quick summary for everyone listening.
I will give the summary a try. Each is for individuals, separate items, and actions that happen one by one. It can feel a little heavy or careful because you are focusing on details.
Spot on. And every is used to talk about the whole group together, or for habits, routines, and recurring time. It is faster and sweeps across the big picture.
And if you want to express the heavy exhaustion of a routine, you throw single in there and say every single day.
Exactly. You have mastered it, Fiona. I want to ask our listeners a question before we sign off today. Think about your own life, your job, or your studies.
Yes, try to write down 2 sentences that reflect your true feelings. Write 1 sentence using each about a detail you have to focus on, and 1 sentence using every for a habit in your life.
We would love to see those examples in the comments. When you connect grammar to your real emotions and your actual reality, it stops being a textbook rule and becomes your voice.
That is the best way to learn. Thank you so much for having me, Alex. This was incredibly eye-opening, even for a native speaker.
It was an absolute pleasure, Fiona. Thank you for bringing your perspective from the event planning world here in Columbus. For all our listeners out there, keep practicing, keep finding your voice, and we will see you in the next episode.